Hey there everyone, I'm Meteorologist Hannah Fink, and today we're going to talk about the tropics, but not in a way you would think. This is going to be an explainer on why we're usually tracking, or there's always a disturbance coming off the west coast of Africa, especially this time of year, the months of August, September, and into October. This is a more favorable area of interest. So let's get into it. I've created this presentation on why tropical waves come off the coast of Africa and why this is a huge part of our hurricane season, whether it's through the National Hurricane Center. The Climate Prediction Center is usually highlighting this as an area of interest 2 to 3 weeks out, especially during the peak of hurricane season. So a lot of Atlantic hurricane seasons begin their journeys thousands of miles away just off the west coast of Africa. Today we're going to explore why this region is such an important starting point for tropical disturbances as well as depressions, and then turning into storms and possible hurricanes. Another thing I wanted to note, the pictures shown throughout the entirety of this presentation is used for educational purposes. They are not present or current data at this time. So in Africa, the hot desert air from the Sahara meets moist tropical air from the south. This clash of dry air versus moist air creates ripples in the atmosphere called African easterly waves. So when we're looking, that's what we refer to as tropical waves whenever we're tracking something coming off the coast. These waves then move to the east, and they're often the seed of tropical storms and hurricanes. And that's why we see things like in this bottom right corner, you can see that cluster of red, green, and blue. Those are the ripples we're referring to. Those are tropical waves that usually have some sort of disturbance in the next 2 days or the next 7 days. So as these waves move off the African coast, they pass over very warm water in the Atlantic. So hurricanes need ocean temperatures of at least 80 degrees Fahrenheit to form. And then obviously if it's more than 80 degrees, that provides more fuel. That's why at this time, usually they're about in the mid 80s to upper 80s during the month of September, which is why we have this labeled as the peak of hurricane season. So the Eastern Atlantic provides that fuel, especially in the late summer months into AKA fall, so September, like I've mentioned. So warm waters and moist air help thunderstorms grow. When the air rises, it creates clusters of storms. If there isn't too much wind high in the atmosphere, or in other words, wind shear, you'll hear us use a lot, to break them apart, these clusters can organize into tropical depressions and eventually into either a storm or into a hurricane. So sea surface temperatures, that bottom right corner, that is buoys. Buoys help us measure ocean temperatures, especially way out. It's another way of just helping us know where we're at within that time frame and if that's going to be a concern for a tropical wave that is in the Atlantic. So once storms form, they don't just sit there. They're being pushed to the west by trade winds. These act like a conveyor belt, steering storms across the Atlantic towards the Caribbean, the Gulf, and sometimes towards the United States, making landfall. So that high-res satellite is also showing you these ripples we were referring to. These are what we would call very disorganized showers and thunderstorms, but you can see it's a couple areas of waves, as we would call them, because they're separated clusters, and it's coming off the west coast of Africa. So to sum it up, Africa provides the starting disturbance area, and then the Atlantic's warm waters fuel the storm. So that's why we refer to the Atlantic almost as a highway, because of the trade winds steering them to the west. So that's why so many of our biggest and strongest hurricanes can be traced back to the coast of Africa. And then that forecast model just kind of helping prove, not really prove, but kind of illustrate the point of the Atlantic highway and how it kind of all moves in one direction. North of those lines, just to give you kind of an idea, is usually the Bermuda High. It's a high pressure system. That's usually why you don't see them go into the Atlantic more, or that's why you don't see them curve till they get closer to the United States, because that high is protecting that area of interest. And the Bermuda High isn't always there, but in the year 2025, there is a Bermuda High present. So that's one of the reasons why it is making the path that it is. That's why we've noticed this specific year, a lot of things that come off the coast of Africa are just kind of going in a straight line towards the west rather than turning. So that's just kind of a little bit of an explainer with that. overall, this is completely normal. It's that time of year. There's a lot of summertime thunderstorms, especially in the months of August and September in Africa, that come off the coast, and then they meet with that warm ocean water. You know, hot and cold air, as we all learned at a very young age, mixing together makes a thunderstorm, and that is why that is such a popular area of interest. Usually the National Hurricane Center notices it right away. They also know about 2-3 weeks out that that could be an area of interest, because the Climate Prediction Center has extended outlooks 2 weeks out as well as 3 weeks out. Sometimes we show those on air. Those are those areas that have that percentage. It's usually about a 20, 40, or 60% chance that we could see something potentially developing there. So it's just kind of an area to watch based off of what they're saying. And then the National Hurricane Center, usually around that time, they do notice something, especially this time of year. It's completely normal. That's why whenever you see on air that we are covering an area way, way, way out into the Atlantic, coming off the coast of Africa, it's usually something that we have to watch, but it's thousands of miles away. It's never usually a concern until it gets too close to our area. That's why we like to remind people it is way out. That's usually about 7 to 10 days out to give you a time frame versus just saying miles. So overall, this is why we see things come off the coast of Africa, especially at this time of year. Thank you so much for watching Next Weather. We'll see you tomorrow.